Today, today I'm going to do a little review on this K1200lt. This is a 2003 that I bought with the idea that maybe I'd see if I could convert it to a trike. It's not really feasible, so that's not going to happen. So what I did is I replaced the fuel pump because that was bad. And as you can see, it's running real good here. And I take it out for a little test drive. This is the first BMW I've ever owned. And yeah, so let me get bored here and we'll do a little discussion on the handling and such. I tend to compare everything to Goldwings because that's kind of my current thing now. So plop her in gear here. It's got a little bit of a different feel to it because it's got these wheelbarrow handles, which are just plain weird. One thing about this too is it's an inline 4-cylinder, and the cylinder head is on the left side, and of course it leans that way when you put it on the center stand or side stand, which means every time you start these things they smoke, and it smokes quite a bit to start with. And that's just a known issue with the 4-cylinders. The way BMW designed it was, you know, European. It's backwards and upside down. The bike is really smooth. It's nimble. Compared to the Goldwing, I would say it handles much better. It's very light feeling, even though it weighs about the same. It really does drive quite well. The rear suspension is pretty good. I've got it set to the highest level right now, so that could probably be turned down a little bit. It does have radial tires on it, so they're harsh, which radial tires are just cement bricks. They're round cement bricks. And you basically feel every bump with the front end, very similar to the Goldwing in that respect, unless you're running a bias ply. But you know, you're running 40 psi, they're just going to be harsh. But it does handle well, drives well. It's got an adjustable windshield, which I have at about half mast. I actually cut 6 inches off this windshield. And so now I can actually adjust it, so if I run it all the way down, I get quite a bit of wind, which actually on a cool evening would feel really good. Getting quite a bit of buffeting, which some people don't like. I don't really care. But then you run it up, and it's an instant change. Now that's all the way up, and I'm looking through the top inch. And there I'm just looking over the edge. That's perfect. And I didn't really notice any difference in the wind from all the way up to this level, so it's actually real good. Other than that, from the mechanical standpoint, it's just a horrible machine to work on. Anything you do on this requires massive amounts of plastic removal, and so that's kind of a downside to it. But from the riding standpoint, the seat's comfortable. The feel is real good. I'd have to rate it as a really decent motorcycle from the driver standpoint. One glaring issue is the brakes. It's got this servo assist brake nonsense, so the brakes are extremely jumpy. If you're making a U-turn, you dare not use the front brake because you will lock up the wheel. They're very grabby. The back isn't too bad, but the front is horrible. And I know people have talked about, you know, disabling the servo thing, and I think I can see why they talk about that. Well, I got a bunch of cars to wait for here. The mirrors are weird. They're mounted kind of low, you know, so you kind of look down, although the view is okay. I guess, you know, it's just one of the things you get used to. The seating position's real good. It's got the European type seating position, so my feet are basically direct below me, and I like that. Excuse me. I like that, which is very similar to the way the Goldwing sits. You sit fairly high on this machine, but it does have a little bit sportier feel than the Goldwing. The Goldwing is a touring bike. It's not a sport tour, and this is more of a sport tour bike. I can see where, like the new 2018 Goldwing and 2019 are set up a little bit more toward this type of ride, and I can see why. It's kind of nice. I would take this bike on a trip. I would hope I didn't have any trouble, because I don't know if I have enough wrenches to fix it. But it would be a comfortable ride. It would be in all kinds of weather, rain, whatever. It'd be good, I think. Probably as good as the Goldwing. Here again, I keep referencing the Goldwing because I use that as a standard. And there's a lot of bikes that I personally would not take on a trip just because it just wouldn't be any fun. But this one I would. It's got a lot of doodads on it. It's got a temperature gauge on the left side, 72 degrees Fahrenheit right now. It's got a knob or do on the right side for adjusting the headlight. Gauge cluster is nice. I'm kind of getting used to the brakes a little bit. You got to be really cautious with them. I don't know if I would say it has a sport bike feel. It definitely is a sport tour. I guess if I wouldn't have done mechanical work on this, I would rate it as an excellent machine. From the mechanical standpoint, it is absolutely awful. Just to work on it, it's, like I said, it requires massive plastic removal to do the simplest things. Checking the radiator requires a complete disassembly of the motorcycle. It's just incredible. You got to pull the gas tank and everything out. But that aside, from a riding standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 thumbs up, I think. Some weirdness. The signal lights are not self-canceling, from what I can tell. And you got, on the right handlebar, you got a cancel button. So it's kind of like the Harley Davidson. There's a button on each side for the signals. But the cancel, you know, normally like on a Harley, you hit the signal the second time and it turns it off. On this, you have a canceling button you got to hit. So that's kind of weird. It's got a map light up above the instrument cluster there. That's kind of awesome. And, ooh, I got to get out of Dodge here. They are graveling our streets. Just what you want to see on motorcycles. They're going to be putting wear coat on, which is essentially they spray tar on the road and then they dump gobs and gobs of gravel on it. And for a motorcycle, it's not exactly what you would say fun. So this bike is running and she's good. And I'm going to put it into storage is what I'm going to do. I'm waiting for the title on this one. Like I say, I bought it purely because I wanted to see if I could make a reverse trike out of it, which I cannot do. It doesn't have a frame to attach to, and it's just kind of a logistical nightmare to make it happen, so I'm just not going to do it. So this one I'm going to actually sell, and hopefully I can get what I paid for it. As far as resale value, now this is a 2003. I've got a 2003 Goldwing, which I would say book on the Goldwing would be about $7,500. This is worth half as much. This particular year, if you can get $3,500 for one of these, you're doing pretty good. So they do not have a good resale value. I think initial purchase price on this bike was probably about $18,000, and it's worth $3 grand, really. But for $3,000, if you want to go on tour and ride around on a bike that is actually pretty decent, I think this is the deal. So I think when I sell this, somebody's going to end up with a pretty good deal here. They're going to end up with an inexpensive bike. Got to hit that cancel button. Inexpensive bike that's going to get them where they want to go. It's very smooth. That's one thing I didn't mention here. It's almost as smooth as the Wing, not quite. But surprisingly, you know, 4-cylinders, inline fours tend to be a little buzzy. And at most RPMs, it's really quite good. The suspension is stiff. So it's got a firm suspension, which is good for handling, not so good for ride, but I think there's kind of a compromise. The seat's very comfortable. So I would have to say, before I took it for a test drive, I would rate it as not good. After driving it here this little bit, I'm going to change that to pretty good. Pretty good bike. And if I end up keeping it, if it doesn't bring the money I think it should, I will probably drive it. You know, it's surprising. I've been building trikes and driving trikes now for a couple of years, so I don't drive too many two-wheel, but you sure don't lose your finesse. I mean, it's just like I've been driving these things. Well, I have been driving them my whole life, but you know, you don't. Oops, I got a problem. Problem averted. God, that front brake is just awful. If there's only one thing I'm going to say negative, it is that the brakes are awful. Okay, so I'm going to park this guy. And I'm going to get out my Valkyrie. And that one's going home with me, and this one's going in the storage container until I get my title and get it sold. It helps if I use the correct key. And I've got an Excelsior Henderson. That one's going into permanent storage because that's a kind of a collector bike. So this guy's coming out. This is my all-around favorite bike. It's one of my prototypes, the only one I have left. And it's crude, and it's crusty, and it's fun to drive. And I don't mind getting it dirty and taking it out in the mud and gravel. And I've got a trailer that's going to be hooked up to it. That's going home too. It's weird to see this place empty. All winter I had this thing stuffed full of motorcycles that I was working on, and I finally got to the point where I'm down to one. So we'll get this thing hooked up. I'm going to tear this trailer apart and redo the trailer with some saddlebags I got for a Goldwing. kind of a little trailer. Starts good. Like I said, it runs really good. Ooh. We'll put him over on the side here. And the other thing with this is this side stand is so weird. This thing leans at like 45 degrees. Okay, well, I would have to call that a moderate success. Get my glasses and my checkbook and my phone. Another one of them alarms going off. Nobody pays attention to those things. Okay, well,